talking with Steve Schwartz. He's an expert on the LSAT test, which is kind of redundant. You can't say LSAT test, but I did a podcast with him a while ago, which is great. And I have a lot of listeners who are college students interested in going to law school. So I find these segments really important, and especially in light of the coronavirus and the changes that are happening to the LSAT exam. I wanted to ask you, what is going on? I know a lot of lawyers went through this. They're interested too. What are the changes that are happening, Steve, to the LSAT program?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John. And thanks for having me. So the biggest change is that the LSAT has gone online because of COVID-19, not possible to administer it in person, of course, in large gatherings. So they've moved it to an online format. Students are taking it at home from their own computers. And most notably, the exam has been shortened to 3 sections, not 5, specifically for the online format.
So what sections are being taken out?
Well, they're not including the experimental section anymore. And they're also including only 1 logical reasoning rather than 2, as on the previous exam. So now it's 1 games, 1 reasoning, 1 reading comp.
Does it mean it's harder, easier, or it's still the same? What is your takeaway or your thoughts? I mean, it's hard to know. It hasn't happened yet.
Well, the question difficulty is the same. The section difficulty is the same. I think it's an easier experience to do it at home in the comfort of your own environment, not having to go somewhere or be around other people who might distract you. And also just having a shorter test day experience. You're done in 2 hours.
Wow. And I mean, how do they avoid cheating and stuff like that?
So they're using a company called ProctorU, which also does the GRE, the GMAT, high school advanced placement exams. And they monitor students with a webcam and a microphone, and they record all of it for later review if necessary. And they also use AI to track even your eye movements.
Damn.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really wild. It's interesting, but yeah, that's how they kind of look for anything suspicious.
Okay, so how are you adjusting your training with this scenario that's popping up for these students that are interested in this?
Well, basically, I'm preparing students for the test day experience specifically. So we're not worrying about distractions of other test takers in some unfamiliar environment. We're instead making sure that you've got a comfortable, quiet environment at home. So your friends, your family, your roommates, your dog, nobody's going to interrupt you for those 2 hours. You can just progress smoothly and hopefully be done with no hiccups in the span of those 2 hours. Another big thing is also getting ready for the different length. So endurance is less of a factor because it's 3 sections, not 5. At the same time, though, each question does matter more because you're only doing about 75 questions rather than about 100 scored questions. So no time to get warmed up. You've got to be ready to go. The second section 1 starts, the second question 1 starts. So do some warm-ups before you actually start. And I recommended that even before, but now it's especially important because every question matters just a little bit more now.
It's interesting. You said, I think it's gonna be a big issue having a quiet environment where you don't have family coming in. And it's going to affect people. The whole socioeconomic standard becomes a problem because everyone's in the house right now because of the lockdown. And if you don't have a multi-room house, that becomes a problem of like, where are you going to go? Sit in the bathroom and do it. So there's a comfort level and like, that's going to affect some people, but there's always changes. There's always something going on in the world. How are your students coping with that? Are you stressed out, or what's the mood like?
I think most of my students feel pretty good about it because they like the idea of a shorter exam. They like the idea of not having to go anywhere. I think it becomes more difficult for students who might not have a suitable device. Like if they only have a tablet or only have a phone, those aren't going to work. Or if you have shaky internet. And in those cases, LSAC will actually work with you to provide you with a loaner device, and maybe even a specific location to take it in a pretty small group setting. But yeah, it is harder.
Speaking of home problems, my kid just ran in the middle of the scene. So hopefully these kind of problems won't happen to test takers and the AI won't get them. But I guess that's the reality of it. How are you yourself dealing with life? You're in New York, right?
Yeah, I'm in New York. How's
life in New York? I mean, luckily you have a digital online work environment and which people need, so it's not like they could necessarily shut it off. So you got kind of a good position. I'm assuming you have a relatively good position relative to a lot of other people.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing pretty much everything online anyway. Any in-person classes I was going to be doing, I've transitioned those to online instead, and I've made sure to have a strong internet connection anyway. So things work pretty smoothly for me. Like anybody else, I've got family at home, kids at home, potential interruptions, and so you have to make sure that anytime you have anything really important, like a conference call or something, or especially the LSAT, you got to make sure that you're doing whatever you can to make sure that other people won't interrupt you during that time.
Now, let's take the business angle. What do you do to have a more reliable internet connection?
Well, biggest thing I would say is use Ethernet. So most people, of course, rely on Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi is good enough for most internet activity. Even streaming videos, Wi-Fi is good enough. Obviously, we've all been on like Skype calls or Zoom calls where things go in and out or flicker a little bit. And if
Yeah.
you can have a plugged-in Ethernet wired connection, like one of those old phone jacks, like you plug that into your computer if your computer even allows it. Otherwise, you might need an adapter of some kind. But a wired connection is always going to be a lot stronger than a Wi-Fi connection. So I would encourage anybody to get a wired connection if possible. Obviously, during the current lockdown, that might be difficult to even get somebody to come install that. But if you could order a wire and just connect to your router or connect to your modem, that'll give you more reliability. And if this happens on the LSAT Flex, that there's a flicker for a second, that's totally fine. They'll save your work and you can pick up where you left off. But if it was a big outage, I would imagine that would invalidate the test due to security.
Yeah. And another thing is, my internet provider, I have a regular home internet. I've been using it even though I work from home, but they send me flyers that say if you get the business version of the internet's more expensive, you get better service and like all this kind of stuff. I always debated whether it's worth it to buy like the extra level of internet connection from the local cable provider. But so far, are you using the typical home base, or did you have like a commercial line?
Well, once I started doing a lot of videos, a lot of online classes, a lot of recording like this, I actually did upgrade to a gigabit connection. And it is a little bit more expensive, but to me, it was worth it because I'm constantly doing webinars and recorded calls like this. And you never know what the other person's going to have. And so I at least want mine to be as good as possible. And since I'm doing like at least 1 or 2 full days a week, I'm doing nothing but recordings like this. And I'm often doing classes in the evening and I'm recording them for later use. And I want my students to have a good experience as well. So I made that investment. It's a business expense, which is nice. And also it doesn't hurt that I get better Netflix and all that too. It's a nice bonus.
I'm going to look into it. I'm glad we talked because that's so important, because I do have these Zoom calls where sometimes it's on my end where it starts pausing, you can't hear them. And it's just a waste of time. It ruins the flow of things and ruins the user experience. So I'm going to look into this to see how they can handle it. That's good point.
Yeah, especially if like you have family at home too, and like somebody else might be streaming something else. Like your kid is streaming a video on the tablet and your significant other is also watching something or on a video call with their family. Too many people on video calls simultaneously or using video too much, it will diminish yours. And you don't want like your business conference call to be interrupted by your kid watching SpongeBob, right?
Yeah. And that's you said the scenario in my household. I just got to remember to lock the door next time, but that's it. But thank you so much, Steve. If people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, sure. So again, my name is Steve Schwartz. I run the LSAT blog. I also host the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel and podcast. I also have a Facebook community and an Instagram of the same name, and I'll send you all the links.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll pop in the show notes. Thanks a lot. Stick around after the call, but I appreciate it talking with us again.
Sure. Thanks, John. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.